What happens when a Las Vegas Reformed Jewish rabbi and a Las Vegas Presbyterian pastor have a conversation as friends? They discover that no matter where you live or what you believe, faith matters. In this episode of Faith Matters, Rabbi Sanford Akselrad from congregation near Tamid and Reverend Adrian from Green Valley Presbyterian Church talk about the aftermath of the 2024 presidential election. Both faith leaders say now is a time to tone down the rhetoric, look for common ground, and embrace values of faith.
Adrian, how you doing?
I'm doing okay. Okay. We got through Election Day, and I'm not going to ask you who you voted for. Hopefully you won't ask me. I think those can be private conversations. I generally don't share that, but
Adrian, listen,
there's one thing
wait a minute. Just tell me. I won't tell anyone.
Nobody's listening, right?
No one. No one's going to know who we voted for.
I thought it was just.
We're recording this podcast on November 7th. So I think pretty much everybody knows, Trump won president. Some of the other election spots are coming in a little bit more slower when they're really tight things.
Right.
But yeah, it's been quite a roller coaster ride here. I guess if we have to give gratitude, no more text messages, no more commercials, hopefully no more anxiety that is spurred up by daily things telling you to be afraid of this candidate or that candidate. It's like, please God, enough, right?
Right. I mean, I had phone calls and text messages from friends I'd never met all the time last week. Adrian, how are you? Please remember to vote for.
I mean, I had people say, if this person won, the world will end. And then another side would say, if this person won, it's going to be cataclysmic. Certainly, elections matter. Absolutely. And I should let our listeners know that, sure, 5013Cs, the clergy don't stand on the pulpit and say, vote for this one or vote for that one. But once the election's taken place, it's a much more open type of conversation. So I know all you folks who say we don't want to talk about politics from the pulpit. Well, we're on a podcast. So if it bothers you, don't listen to the podcast. And also know that part of our role since the time of the Bible is really to be a voice of conscience. That was the prophets. And also when society is so divided as it is now, is to try to find ways to bring people together. And I think that's how I see my role now, is to try to bring this diverse congregation and community together so we can get to work on working for the values that we do share in common and may have differences of approach on how to achieve them.
And I think that's the challenge for us as faith leaders in our communities today, is to hold our congregations together to say, okay, we've been through an election cycle. Now it's time to remind ourselves of who we are and what we've been called to do by God. And to that end, I want to say thank you for the letter that you sent to your community, to congregation near Tamid, that you and Jessica Hutchings sent out yesterday, I believe it was. And as always, when I read your writing, I wish that I had that enormous gift that you do. But you captured, I believe, the essence is what so many of us are feeling now. And that is that we have friends who are overcome with joy, and we have friends who are quite despondent, quite concerned. And yet we love them all as their pastors, as their rabbis, as their clergy.
So it's two things. One is it was written the day, when was it written? Yesterday. So that was Wednesday, the day after the election. We were up very late. And I was talking with Cantor Hutchings, and she said, we're really swamped because we just finished funeral. And we have other things before we leave town. And she says, you want to take the turn to write something that we can send out to the congregation? And I said, let me think about it. And I said that for more than one reason, because I was exhausted and I was searching for words that might bring people together. And because people read into your words things that you don't say, depending upon what they think your political persuasion is or is not. But ultimately, I did think it was my role to try to write something that would bring people together. And since you brought it up, let me just share a little bit with our listeners. Dear beloved members of Congregation near Tamid, in the aftermath of yesterday's elections, we find ourselves in a moment of reflection and contemplation. Our community is diverse, with many of you feeling joy and hope, while others may be experiencing disappointment and concern. In times like these, we must come together, embrace our shared values, and support one another. The democratic process is a testament to our collective voice, and while the outcomes may not align with everyone's hopes, it is essential to remember that our strength lies in our unity and commitment to one another. And then I talk about, that we need to continue the good fight, whatever our fight is, whatever our values are. This isn't the end. This is part of the journey. And then I conclude, as we move forward, may we be a source of strength for one another in our shared commitments to justice, compassion, and love. And I hope I thread the needle for people, and I appreciate you appreciating it. I had a couple of people say, why are you sounding like it was a terrible day, Rabbi? And I said, reread what I wrote. I didn't say that. I said, for some people, it is a tough day, and you should acknowledge that. And for other people, it is a happy day, and you should acknowledge that as well. We don't gloat. We listen. Now, I think, is a time to listen, because there's a reason society is divided, and we need to find commonality and how we're going to come together. So,
and I think it's part of our faith tradition and part of our American value system that it is this willingness to vocally exercise and to speak our differences, and then after the election to find a way to come together and to work for the common good. And that's where we are now. That will we be a part of that process of finding our unity? And that's what I loved about your letter, is that it spoke to that we have to continue to embrace the values that are ours as people of faith. And so as I read your letter, all I could think of was the prophet Micah, but what does God ask us to do? But to walk humbly and to do justice and to love mercy. And that's really where you end your letter.
Okay. And as simple as it sounds, the prophets were controversial in their day, right?
That's right. That's right. I don't have to agree with my elected officials. I don't have to agree with everything, the platform of someone I vote for. But we have gone through this process. And as people of faith, I think we have an opportunity to model healthy community, to model the beloved community, to say, in spite of the fact that Sandy and I may disagree with this or disagree with that, that we're going to forge a relationship together. And that's what makes a congregation strong. That's what makes a community of faith strong. That's what makes a society strong.
And so I went to a seminar today for rabbis about, what are you going to talk about, or how you're going to bring your congregations together. And rabbis are not monolithic. There are people who are Republican, people who are Democrats, and we're all over the map as well. We're human beings. And I think one rabbi spoke, and I listened, and he said, whatever you were fighting for before, keep fighting. Even if you were on a side that you think, quote, won the election, well, that doesn't mean that fight is won. Those issues will keep coming up.
Right.
And if
Right.
you were on the side where you thought, oh, it was lost, well, keep fighting, you know? What are the things that you believe in? What are the things that you are passionate for? I guarantee you there is a charity, there is a committee, there is an organization that believes in those same values, and you should not despair, but find, catch your breath, find a renewed sense of energy, and when you are ready, understand that your time and energy is needed now more than ever, as a counter or as someone who might enrich the direction of where our country is going.
It's interesting because as you talk about that and how we all still can embrace the values that we brought with us into the voting booth, whether we cast our ballot by mail or went on Tuesday election day or early voted.
I waited for a Harry Potter owl to, pick up my ballot. But
Did it happen? Tell me about it. I want to hear this story.
did not happen, darn it.
Oh,
That
darn.
owl stole my vote.
This would be the most popular podcast ever.
That's right.
But, what I hope is that in 2 weeks, we celebrate one of my most cherished holidays as a nation, and that's Thanksgiving. Because it's a time when we gather around the table with friends and family, and we take an opportunity to say, thank you, God, for what you've given us. We celebrate the gift of friendship, the gift of community. And I hope that all of us can sit at those tables this year and say, you know what, no matter who you voted for, no matter where you stand, I'm so thankful that God put you in my life. I'm so thankful that we're friends. I'm so thankful that we're family. I think the worst thing that could happen in any election is for us to allow our differences to tear apart our friendships, our relationships, our families. And for me personally, that's where I feel so compelled to speak out to those who are a part of my ministry to say, let's move forward. Let's put the election behind us. Let's still work for the values that we believe in, but let's cherish these friendships. Now is not the time for division. Now is the time to come together.
So I agree with you. And I think what's interesting is whenever it's a presidential election, it's about the person running for president, right? And Trump certainly is a polarizing figure, and that's baked into his persona. So if you vote for him, you know all these negative things, and that's just baked in. And you say, okay, I know this, and this. He's imperfect, but this is where I like him. Da 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 da. And do the same thing with Kamala. You could say, I don't know her that well. She just came on the scene as a vice president. She was more invisible, but she's this, and this. So to me, strip away that now and say, well, what are the things I value? Is it, is it feeding the homeless? Is it climate control? Is it, pollution?
Is it national security? Is it
whatever
economy?
those values that you're passionate about, keep fighting for them and do not despair. If they were important to you before you entered the voting booth, they're important to you now. And just catch your breath and understand that may be a bit harder or it may be a bit easier, depending upon which side of the aisle you stand for, but keep working for those things. That's, I think, all that I would ask, or
Right.
the rest of us in the aftermath of an election that was so fought so vigorously and divided our country.
To continue, and not only to do that, but to do that as a people of faith, and I love that word, humility. To say that I will fight for this because this is, for many of us, this is what we believe God has called us to fight for, to stand up for. Sometimes I hate to use the word fight because it's so divisive, but to speak out, but to realize we do it with humility and to be willing. I think the challenge for all of us is to always learn to be able to say, Sandy, you and I may disagree, and we have these kind of conversations all the time. I might disagree, but tell me how you came to that conclusion. I think it's important that we understand each other. And that's what I would love to see more of in America today, a willingness to say, I understand that we disagree, but help me understand how you came to that conclusion. And would you listen to me? I'd love to see a lot more listening
Yes.
on
Yes.
tables.
If
Yeah.
you kind of broke it down into steps, let's begin by listening. Let's continue by exchanging ideas. And the third, maybe to agree to disagree. And sometimes it's, oh, I never thought of it that way. Or you're right, this is a problem. And maybe my approach won't work, but yours won't either. Maybe there's a way we can find our way out of this forest and this darkness together, because some of these problems have been around quite a while. And I think that's one reason why people get frustrated. They see these problems that are around decade after decade and there's not movement. So what can we do? We need now to work on these issues that are so passionately challenging to the American people.
And are we willing to, I think about this as I look at a young generation, whether our candidate won or lost, all the way down the ticket. Are we willing to exercise a kind of humility which evokes trust among a younger generation in the democratic process? Because I think that is so important today for our young people to have the ability to believe in this democratic process.
Well, hopefully we brought a little bit of aid and comfort to people who are, waking up a little bit stunned, as well as, being there for people who woke up and have a big smile on their face.
Right.
And now we move forward.
Hmm.
Both sides, if you will, understand, I believe, the need to tone down the rhetoric, find a way to identify the issues, and look for some common ground. That's my hope. That's my prayer. Time will tell, and the months ahead will tell. But for us as community leaders, that's really the first on my agenda, is to bring our congregation, my congregation, together. So thank you, gentle listeners, allowing us to kind of express our thoughts. And we hope that it brings you a little bit more peace of mind. And the sun will rise tomorrow. The days ahead may be more challenging or more enlightening, depending upon your point of view. But the journey continues, and it's not over for any of us. And it's not incumbent upon us either to finish the task, as Pierre Cabo says, and I quoted in my letter. So let's keep fighting the good fight, everybody. Adrian, thank you again. Always a pleasure.
Thank you. I love these conversations.
Me too. To those who are listening to our podcast, thank you so much, and continue to let faith matter in your life as it does in ours. Take care. Shalom.
Faith Matters features Rabbi Sanford Akselrad from Congregation near Tamid and Reverend Adrian Dahl from Green Valley Presbyterian Church, and is produced by Leslie Snadowsky. We hope you join us again for our next podcast episode of Faith Matters.